What to do with your worms or your worm bin if you're planning on going out of town for about 3 weeks to a month. I just sifted this working bin. This is my bin where I keep most of my red wigglers. I used the fine sift GP18 and I sifted out 2 buckets of the fine completed vermicompost. And I'm about to reset my working bin so there's plenty of food for my worms while I do go out of town or out of the country. After I sifted the fine vermicompost with the GP18 pan, I also sifted with the GP14 pan. This is a much bigger grid. It did get rid of all the material that's not quite processed, and all my cocoons and some small worms fell through here also. I am going to set this material aside. I'll probably start a new layer with my bin. That way all the cocoons can hatch and my working bin can continue to produce cocoons, because they do self-regulate their population. As you can see, there's quite a few cocoons in here and little baby worms. I would estimate I have a few hundred, if not close to 1,000 cocoons in here. That's going to help keep the population in my working bin down. It's going to keep these working worms happy and feel like they have enough space and food to reproduce and keep producing cocoons. As you can see, this material is the rough material that needs to be worked over. And I am going to reset this bin, and when I am finished, I should have 2/3 of recognizable material and only 1/3 of starting to be unrecognizable material. That being said, the material that is recognizable is going to be shredded cardboard, shredded leaves, soaked in my chicken manure. And so let's get started on that. So this is my working bin full of red wigglers. I do put them to work. I vermicompost because I have chickens and I want to keep my own carbon footprint low. And so I use my worms to compost my chicken manure. I am collecting a bucket of leaves at my evergreen loquat tree. I am collecting green leaves and also brown fallen leaves. I just put all my loquat leaves through the shredder. I've got about a half a bucket full. I'm going to add that to my bin. There are a few things you should not do when you know you're going out of town, out of state, or out of the country. You should not experiment with new foods and say, well, you know, I saw this video on YouTube, worms like this. No, stop yourself. If you know your worms like what you've been doing in the past, do the exact same thing. And do it about a week or 2 weeks before you go out of town, out of state, out of country. Why? Because if you overcorrected the acidity or the alkalinity of your bin, you have time to correct it before you actually leave. Now this bin has 1/3 of somewhat unrecognizable materials from the material I just sifted. It also contains all of my worms. And it has 2/3 of recognizable material, including chicken manure, soaked cardboard, and fresh leaves from my loquat tree. I'm going to add some water to this. I'm going to let this ferment and do its thing, and then I'm going to see if my worms are happy and continue to be healthy. If they are not happy, I'm going to try to correct the conditions. And again, the one thing you should not do when you go out of town, out of state, out of country for about a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, is try to think it is okay to experiment at this time. It is not a good time to experiment. If you know what your worms like, you had a working bin with good working conditions, keep the exact same conditions. Do not switch it up. At least not until you're back from vacation. I just added some water to my bin. Again, I have maybe 1/4 of my bin that is starting to be unrecognizable material. Consists of some tomato stems, banana peel, shredded cardboard that is half worked over, and then 3/4 are the new material, the chicken manure, soaked cardboard, fresh leaves off my loquat tree. And I'm not leaving out of the country for another 16 days. So I reset my bin now because, again, I want to make sure that I did not upset the acidity level of my bin, that my worms, red wigglers, remain happy and healthy. And if the balance is off, I have time and resources to reset my bin, fix the acidity. And the only thing I would do before I leave, maybe a day or two before I leave, is if they are happy with what I did now, I will add another layer of the cardboard soaked in chicken manure, some more of the shredded leaves off my loquat tree, and add some eggshells crushed up. Maybe I'll go on a hike and find some horse manure that I'll let sit out for a couple of days. I can also add that to my bin. But again, before you go out of town, out of state, out of the country, do not think it is a good time to experiment with new bedding, new materials, and new food. If you have a working bin and it's been working for you, keep the conditions the same. Thank you.